Hi, welcome to Finding the Word. It's Melanie Brown, and I have my beautiful daughter Marlena with me today. I have been wanting her to come on with me for a while, but she is in nail school and she works, and it's just always a lot going on. And so finally, we were able to carve out this time, and it's such a blessing for me to have you here. It is my 100th word. So this is a special one. I've kind
Crazy.
of
100
tripping. Yeah, I've
days.
done 100 days. It's like wild because I really couldn't have seen that or didn't really feel like that was gonna be possible at the time of starting it. So that's cool too. Okay. And so the word today is foolishness. And that's because we have a lot of different conversations about things that are going on and stuff out there in these streets. And so we were talking the other morning, and you had been out because you will go out, you like to dance, and just are really realizing as you're out doing things, just the amount of foolishness that's really going on. So I just wanted to talk about that, talk about like the journey from going out, dancing, having a good time to just kind of realizing what's really happening around you.
Yeah. Well, I'm always sober. Like when I go out to these places, I'm always sober. I'm always, of a sound mind. A lot
Mhm.
of times when people aren't sober, they are nicer, they are more fun. We
Okay.
chit chat, we laugh, we joke,
Uh-huh.
whatever. But I think it was more so just an energy shift for
Mhm.
me because like when I first started going out, it was all new
Mm.
and I
Mhm.
was, so excited to go out that I wasn't really paying attention to what was really going on around
Okay.
me. And once I was just standing there. And then once I got used to the music and I wasn't looking forward to this song or singing along to the lyrics, I found myself standing there in this loud, noisy, smelly room,
Wow.
just surrounded by foolishness.
Okay. And so I know when I was your age, in my early 20s, there was just a lot of people just looking for attention, a lot of escaping
Definitely a
realities and
lot of
things for
escapism,
people.
a lot of
Is it,
running
I'm
from
assuming it's the
problems.
same, but in terms of just the foolishness that you're experiencing in 2025 that
Yeah.
I was experiencing in the 90s, what would you
I'd say the
say?
only difference is probably just there's less stigma around drug use. That it's, oh, instead of you're just drunk, now you're drunk and you're high. And they're
Mhm.
proud of it.
They're more proud. Okay, I don't know if, yeah, people were doing things for sure, um, but maybe not proud. I don't remember being with people that were proud about it, but
They
a
were
lot of
proud.
foolishness too with even just letting your guards down.
One of the things that's really stuck out to me, like over time, is just how weird it is that it's been normalized to have a designated driver. The fact that like all of these people are going to put themselves in such a risky situation
Mm-hmm.
that you have to have, one person that agrees to stay sober and stay of a sound mind to protect everybody and to make sure everybody gets home safely at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the night.
So I know that when you're out, it's like you have been a lookout for people. Like you have felt like there's been situations where people almost hit by cars, and they're just kind of out here, and you're like, you know what, I in some ways you didn't feel like you needed to be out there, but at the same time too
It's like what
was
would happen
able
if
to
I
help
wasn't. I
people.
had one of my friends, she was grabbed by the throat by this random guy. Well, not this random guy. Like we
Mm,
had encountered him a few times
okay.
there. You see somebody 4 or 5 times at the bar
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you feel more comfortable with them than you
Mm-hmm.
should. They
Okay.
don't feel like as much of a stranger as they
Right.
are in reality.
Right.
And she was drunk, obviously, and
Mm-hmm.
kept hitting him. Like she was playfully hitting him,
Oh, okay.
but he was like, oh, stop, whatever. She wasn't stopping. She's inebriated.
Mm-hmm.
And she hits him again, and he turned around and he was like, didn't I tell you? And he grabs her by the throat. And then she kind of fell into this car and he had her by the throat. And
No.
I was like, whoa. I was like, absolutely not. And I had to go kind of push in between them. And I was just like, you need to keep your hands to yourself. And he was like, well, she keeps hitting me. And I was just like, no, like you know that she's not sober.
Mm.
You're more sober than she is. You should have enough sense to know you have no business putting your hands on her. And he was like, well, I'm sorry, but I was like, there's no I'm sorry, but like you need to
Oh
step
my
away. You need
God.
to remove yourself. And
Okay.
she didn't even remember it the next
Wow.
day.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just little situations like
Where you're
that
just
where
like,
it's
this
just
is
like
just
what's
foolishness.
really
Yeah.
going on
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Like how is this fun?
Right. And then in the scriptures, it lets us know that the fear of the Lord is beginning of wisdom. And so we're talking about places where there is just no acknowledgement of God or fear of the Lord. And so it's showing in the choices and the things that are going on and being proud of it. I know that that kind of also leads me into thinking about how we were also talking about being excluded in certain ways for that very reason. And where you're thinking, man, I thought, we all get along well at work. And I remember just enjoying just hanging out with people. And then they would always make plans to do things. And I would be like, okay, they're not inviting me. But then you realize down the road that it was like, okay, we're getting high or we're doing things that we know that you're not going to want to do. And that's the reason I was actually excluded. You had mentioned something similar that had happened at work. So I thought that was interesting too.
Definitely. Because, I feel like it's natural to kind of always start blaming yourself and just kind of being like, well, what's wrong with me? Why don't they want me to go? What do they have that I don't have, that makes them connect to each other and not to me?
Okay.
And then you'll find out later that they just don't have the same principles as you. They don't have the same morals, and I do think we kind of underestimate just how good people are at reading you, and they I would say, some of the only wisdom that people do have is being able to see somebody, interact with them a few times, and then know, okay, they're not going to put up with this.
Yeah.
They're not going to put up with that. They're not going to have fun at this event.
They were aware that you were not going to be.
They know, they may not know you, but they know enough about you to know.
Yeah. And that shows the power of the discerning of spirits. We are not seeing that part going on. We always forget that this is what's happening. So a lot of times what continues to keep repeating and the types of people we continue encountering and dealing with are ones that spirit realm is connecting in or not. So they're realizing you're just not connecting with them on that level. So it's the light and darkness not being able to, dwell together. And so, which is a good thing.
Definitely.
It's a good thing. And I learned later.
You can't be set apart and be apart.
Exactly. Exactly. And so there's decisions to make. I know as we navigate things, we can end up in places that we can look back and think, okay, I probably shouldn't have been there. I know that this happened in my life too. I know that as you navigate things that you will find your way and figure out what's best for you, where you should be or not as you walk it out. And so the word foolishness is taking me to 1 Corinthians 2, verse 14. And I'm going to read 13 through 16. These things we also speak, not in words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the Holy Spirit teaches, comparing spiritual things with spiritual. But the natural man does not receive the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, nor can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. But he who is spiritual judges all things, yet he himself is rightly judged by no one. For who has known the mind of the Lord that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. And so knowing that, it explains a lot in terms of not having the Spirit of God. Try to utilize wisdom in these situations. It's not going to make sense to people what they should or shouldn't do. It makes sense to have designated drivers. It makes sense because it's wise to have someone be in charge, because otherwise, you're out there drunk driving. And that isn't a good choice. But what we're realizing is the wisdom is that you're not in that condition. And that's not something that's going to be understood. It would just be like, what do you mean? Okay, we have somebody to drive for us so we can get hammered or whatever. Yes, and that's not the type of, that's going to be foolishness for you to explain that this is not the condition that you should be in. Having the mind of Christ is what we are thankful for. And so you're able to then discern what is foolishness or be able to utilize the wisdom of God when you're out there dealing with things. I'm very thankful for you being here and talking with me about this and just wanting to share with others that we need to use wisdom, that we need to be a light, we need to be separate.
No exceptions.
Right. Yeah. And even if you find yourself somewhere, you're having a good time, that you have to still use wisdom, even in the situations, still listen for the Holy Spirit to know even when you need to leave from some place that you have maybe to even change your mind about. Stay in prayer and continue to be a light. And we are so very proud of you, Marlena. So, and thank you for coming on sharing. So don't forget to find the word, and I will see you tomorrow.